Remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network, and I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, and welcome to the Polite Society Podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, November the 13th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morris, and on tonight's show, we'll talk with Tank Knighton about his recent articles at Keep and Bear Arms.
Tank Knighton? Who's that?
I'm Charlie Cook, and we'll talk about a victory in the Fifth Circuit.
We'll also talk about a home contractor who defended himself on a home construction site. So put on your utility belt and climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 683 of the Polite Society Podcast starts right now. All right, it's Monday night. It's just a little bit after 7 in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters. That means that it's time for another episode of Polite Society Podcast. As I usually do, I'm going to go around and see what everybody's been doing. Rob, you were underwater last week.
Overseas and underseas at the same time. I'm glad to be back. I couldn't carry there. I've been carrying every day since I got back. I waited almost 4 weeks for ATEI in Michigan to work on my handgun. When I called them up, they still hadn't ordered the parts they needed. I've been dry practicing. I bought a new gun belt called a Next belt. I like it. Been using it every day. Charlie, how about you?
Yeah, I have a Next belt. I have 2 Next belts, and I absolutely love them. So I'm sure you'll dig them as well. This past week, I took a buddy to the range for a little refresher lesson on a shotgun. And then I also had a Utah class this past weekend. So that's been keeping me busy with gun stuff. Paul, what's been happening here with the Polite Society news?
So you've got 2 Next belt. Is that for one for before Thanksgiving, one for after?
No, and I'll tell you why. The Next belts are ratchet belts. They are always the perfect size.
No belt too big, too small. It's always the perfect size.
It really is. I bought one, I think it was in 20 or 21. I bought one with the Gadsden flag on it. And then I went out to Rancho Cucamonga and I interviewed one of the sales reps from Next Belt, and they made a Next Belt with my logo on it. So I only wear that on special occasions.
Now, if you were to listen to Yehuda Reamer, you're always supposed to be repping your brand. So why is that not your everyday belt?
Because it's special. Come on. I don't want to bang it up. So I know with some everyday use, it's going to get all scratched.
All right. Oh boy, let me get over here. I want to look. We're getting all kinds of comments coming in.
Tom's not even on the show yet.
I'm telling you, man. I'm telling you. Let me get to a couple of comments here real quick. Whoops, why is that one? That's weird. Hang on, let me do some adjusting here. And try this one more time. I don't get who if you comment in a group, I don't get your name on Facebook, just Facebook user. I'm just happy to be here to heckle Charlie and tell Rob how much I love his scuba pictures. I don't. I hate it when Rob posts scuba pictures because I get jealous. So,
I hate them because I don't like being under the fish always freak me out. I'm like, God, every time I see those pictures, I'm like, God bless Rob Morris. There's no way I would do that.
Okay.
All right. And then they also were getting a little bit heckled here. Looks like you guys almost practiced this.
Right on. Almost.
All right. Let's go ahead and we're going to jump to our first break. When we come back, very patiently, Tom Knighton of Bearing Arms is waiting to talk to us. Here's a couple stories of his I want to get to that he's written recently, very patiently, as he's almost sleeping on us. I can see him in a little corner down in my screen. We're going to step aside to our first break. We're going to hear from ACLDN. We'll get to Tom Knighton right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Givens, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
All right, we are back, and joining us as advertised, Tom Knighton from Bearing Arms. Tom's a friend. He's when I did the bullet 5 days a week, and then the weekend bullet, he was a frequent contributor to both. I still call Tom the attitude behind Bearing Arms. If you go to a Bearing Arms article, you don't need to look at the byline to see who wrote it. All you need to do is start reading the article. If in the first 3 sentences you get attitude, you know Tom wrote that article. Tom, thanks for joining us today, man.
Happy to be here, man.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've written recently. One article that I love is this. Let me go ahead and pull it up. The title of the article is "Expat Wants to Add AR-15s to NFA List." Well, expat generally means expatriate, which is, I would say the opposite of a patriot. It's not good enough here, so I'm going somewhere else.
Yep. This guy moved to Portugal.
Yes. And now he
moved
thinks
to Portugal, and
he thinks he knows what's best
he
for
wants
us.
to tell us how to do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he thinks he's onto something novel.
Yeah, well,
that's the hilarious part.
And he's big on saying, look, I'm not saying ban AR-15s. He just wants to add them to the NFA. He wants to make you pay $200 to Uncle Sam to own one and get a special stamp and wait a year and a half.
Exactly. And his supporting argument is the Thompson submachine gun. He argues that, it was basically the AR-15 of its day. He referred to it as light, which was hilarious for a 10-pound submachine gun. To how you know he doesn't know what he's actually talking about. It was concealable. Gangsters used it, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, hey, we added it to the NFA list, and, we passed the National Firearms Act. It was on the list, and homicides dropped. Yeah, they dropped when prohibition was repealed. If you actually look at the homicide rates during that time, it's NFA, no effect. Repealing prohibition, immediate decrease in homicides.
Yep.
Like night and day. Now, correlation isn't causation, but it is suggestive, especially in a case like this. NFA didn't do anything to actually stop the mob from getting submachine guns because they were already getting liquor.
Which was illegal.
Which at the time was, which was illegal. Afterwards, they started bringing in narcotics. They started bringing in contraband. They smuggled anything they wanted. They could bring in. They could bring in guns. But that was his supporting argument. And it's funny because on one hand he's saying, I'm not saying we should ban them, but then he actually acknowledges that the NFA was an effective ban in a lot of ways on machine guns. And, of course, he's falling into the whole trap of, well, an AR-15 kind of looks like a machine gun and you can fire it really quickly. That makes it a machine gun. Of course, then again, this is a guy who thinks that the Thompson submachine gun was a lightweight piece of hardware.
And and
compared to something you had to put on a tripod, he's not wrong. But it's not something I'm wearing on my belt, right?
Have you?
Right,
there are these tubular magazines for the Thompson that hold 100 rounds of 45, and you also point this out in your article. The Thompson shot pistol. Today it would be a pistol caliber carbine. They shot.
Right, he called it powerful. He referred to it as lightweight and powerful, and I'm like, it's an over 10-pound rifle that shoots a pistol round. This is how you know he has no clue what he's talking about on guns. Okay. He didn't even do a Google search.
Tank, help me here, because I did do a Google search, and I want to imitate a lawyer on TV someday. We're talking about banning a firearm that has killed fewer people each year than we kill with hands and feet. About 200 and change. We have about 500 deaths from Tylenol overdoses. So
we have 2,000 deaths from constipation.
What the hell? And
we have like 2,000 deaths from constipation.
Expat who's full of it.
And
2,000 deaths from constipation. Is that what you said?
That's frightening.
That's over 2,000 deaths. That's the statistic I saw earlier today, and it just kind of
a lot of our politics.
I was like,
wow.
I was like, well, crap.
Not really.
I'm just a little slow on the uptake today. Wow.
But seriously, Rob, you're absolutely right. This is not the deadliest weapon. What happens is it's used in, oftentimes in some of the more high profile homicides, we'll find it show up. It is not contrary to what some people think, is not the exclusive domain of mass shooters. It is not the universal choice of mass shooters. I like to point out to people that the worst school shooting on American soil is still Virginia Tech, which involved 2 handguns.
Wow.
And that when you're looking at something like Uvalde, Parkland, both of which had AR-15s were used. The worst school shooting is still a couple of handguns. It has never been about the tool. It's always been about the tool using it.
And again,
Nice.
to put things in perspective, we use a rifle in legal self-defense about 17,000 times a year. So even if we did ban it, would we? And if that ban were effective, we'll say it was. I think it would cost lives, not save them.
Absolutely. Well, that's true of any gun control, any kind of gun ban you want to talk about. Guns, when you look at defensive gun use statistics versus homicide statistics or even violent crime statistics, defensive gun uses outstrip gun crime by orders of magnitude in a lot of cases. So, it's like, how are you going to tell me that these bans, even a total gun ban, will somehow make us safer when how are we going to defend ourselves these 2.5 million times a year because of these 40, 50,000 times a year, half to 2/3 of which are suicides.
Yeah.
And that's a mental health issue. You take away the guns, those people are going to find some other way to try to kill themselves. It's just how it's going to be. So, any kind of gun ban is going to ultimately take more lives than it would save, if it were even effective. Of course, that if is in capitals, couple asterisks, on either end, italicized, bolded, underlined, highlighted, everything, because there is zero chance of that happening.
I got to get to this comment. Robert over on the YouTube side says, I don't know if constipation was deadly. We'd have no politicians. I think Robert is saying that politicians are full of,
Excrement.
or that people crap them out.
Well, yeah, there could be. Let's see here. Where am I at? Yeah, and
I got to say, all this go ahead.
A great point here, and let me get this one in here real quick. 2 out of every 3 gun deaths are suicide. So,
and that's really why they call them gun deaths, is because people hear gun death, they're going to think homicide.
Yeah.
Look any deeper, you're going to think homicide when, depending on the year, some years are a little, different than others, but you're looking at on a particularly good year for suicide, you're looking at about half. Most of the time, it's 2/3. And they don't want people questioning that. So instead of saying homicides and suicides, they just call them gun deaths. Marketing.
yes, absolutely. Well, I got one more story up here I want to talk to you about, Tom, and that is Hollywood.
Before you do,
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
Tom, I liked how you ended that, where you said, it's a pain in the backside, but if you brought cubic dollars, you could get a Thompson submachine gun in the U.S., not in Portugal, and yet there are mass murders in Portugal. I thought that was a nice ending.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was one earlier this year, and this guy's bio actually says he lives in Portugal where there are no mass shootings. And I was like, wait,
so we can't.
I wrote about that mass shooting earlier this year.
You can't read. Okay.
I'm like,
Well,
clearly.
And that mass shooting was a real mass shooting by the classical FBI definition of mass shooting, not the
3 or more people killed.
not including the
3 or more
original
people
shooter.
Killed. Right.
And the gun violence archives, if there's 3 or more people shot, even if all of them lived through it, and that includes the original shooter, that's a mass shooting. So, but no, in Portugal, there was a real, actual mass shooting this spring. Next story I want to talk about, Tom, Hollywood's not even pretending anymore. The Brady Bunch has gotten together with some somewhat high-powered producers out in Hollywood, and look, what I'm taking out, what I thought when I read your article today is they're not learning their lesson. There was a big movie push for a Ruth Bader Ginsburg movie that just absolutely tanked. That was ultra liberal.
Yeah.
And time and again, these big budget movies that are heavy liberal are tanking, and yet little tiny films they spend $100,000 on make tens of millions of dollars because they promote family culture, or they promote the self-defense, or a decent outlook on life that most of the country shares.
Or they just entertain.
Yes.
Or they just entertain. John Wick, that franchise has no message at all. And it has made $1 bazillion, and I have wasted so many hours rewatching it. And I feel no shame in that fact.
I've purchased every one of the John Wick films. I helped that out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's hilarious.
I do remember reading that the first John Wick movie was just supposed to be some stupid throwaway movie, summer blockbuster with a lot of action, and then everyone ended up liking it. So like, hey, we got to do something about this. We can make more money.
The action was too good. The action was too good.
Well,
Yeah.
You know, and
the first John
And they
Wick
were done.
movie, you could say, was right up the ASPCA's alley. Who's on the other side? Because you can't do that to a puppy.
well, in fairness, John Wick is a country song.
He's a what?
He lost his wife. He lost his dog. It was a country song. He lost his car. He lost his wheels. He lost his dog. It was a country song.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
So it's a love story to his
Okay.
dog. Absolutely.
But I want to back up for a second because, wow, we get confused. My neighbors get confused. And I was talking to some really high-powered lawyers in Washington, D.C., and I asked them, how many people get hurt in a mass murder each year, and how many of them were there? How many school attacks were there last year? To say that they were off by an order of magnitude, yeah. And these are people who are smart by any measure. They follow the news, but they confuse the news and Hollywood with facts. It's unlikely that anybody in our family will be a victim of gun violence in a lifetime. Yet, we see thousands of violent criminal acts on Hollywood, between movies and TV. And we think that's means it's common in the real world. That's dangerous. We're making politics based on box office receipts. Ooh,
Yeah. Well,
that's
people,
dangerous.
I often joke that you see more machine guns, used in crimes on NBC alone in a week than you'll probably see all throughout America in a month. And that's considering, like full auto switches, which are popping up a little more often, things like that. It's just not that common. But what makes good crime television? Criminals.
Yeah.
The more dangerous they are, the better. It's storytelling. The problem is, like with Brady, they're going to Hollywood people. They're getting Hollywood people on board to help push a gun control message. And, it crops up in weird places. I want to say a friend of mine told me about the TV show Taken. I never watched the show because the movie was good. Don't mess with a good thing. But there was a scene where he was going into an airport and he left his gun behind. And it's like, aren't you worried going unarmed? No, because everybody else will be unarmed too. That's an anti-gun message right there, because anyone who actually understands, bad guys knows assign it and keeping them out.
Oh, you're right. And TSA security is not necessarily keeping them out.
Oh no. Some of the stories I've written over the years of TSA finding firearms in interesting places, it was because they could not find it. Like, they found one inside of a raw chicken. Well, yeah, if somebody tries to bring a raw chicken onto a plane, I'm going to go, I wonder why.
I think they call that a tell.
They found out of a jar of butter. They found gun parts in one. And you're like, who the hell flies with Jif?
And
It's like if it was at least some local brand, you could chalk it up to, well, yeah, they can't get it where they're going, so they're taking it with them. This was Jif. You can get anywhere. So it's like this idea that you can't get, bad guys aren't going to carry guns because the sign says not to.
We're
hold on a second.
quickly running out of time. But I've got to get this comment in from Facebook. Somebody says, because Hollywood makes great Christmas movies like Die Hard.
Fair.
And let's keep in mind that Lethal Weapon was also a fantastic Christmas movie. The original
It was.
and it came out, so Hollywood gave us that.
Die Hard actually qualifies as a Hallmark Christmas movie if you look at it right.
It does.
Hallmark
I've made
had a
that
second
case.
plot?
No, it's the same plot.
Okay.
Working woman reconnects with her old love over a stressful holiday party.
There you go.
Perfect.
That's straight Hallmark Christmas movie.
We expect to
Ladies
see
and gentlemen,
Tom-
the attitude of bearing arms.
We expect to see a Hallmark article about Die Hard tomorrow on Bearing Arms.
All right.
Probably not.
We are flat out of time for the interview segment. Tom, thank you so much for taking your time to talk to us today, man.
Happy to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right. We're going to step aside to break, folks. When we come back, we've got our news segment, including what we teased at the top of the show. We've got a victory in the Fifth Circuit. We'll talk about that right after we hear from the complete combatant. Right back right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, welcome back. This is the news segment of the Polite Society podcast. I got to say, first, I want to thank Tom. That talking to Tom is always a blast. I absolutely love talking to him, and it's not often enough I get to do that anymore. Let's go ahead and get started. Charlie, looks like you're up in show notes, and you want to take our first one.
All right. The ATF may not make up new laws. A 3-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit has ruled unanimously that the final rule promulgated by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives that tried to outlaw home-built firearms is illegal. The appeals court sent the case back to the district court for reconsideration. Here's the quote from the ruling. The ATF attempted to take on the mantle of Congress to, quote, do something with respect to gun control. But that is not the province of an executive agency to write laws for our nation. That vital duty, for better or for worse, lies solely in the legislature. Only Congress may enact new or modified legislation regarding firearms. Unless and until Congress acts to expand or alter the language of the Gun Control Act, ATF must operate within the statutory text's existing limits. The ATF's rule impermissibly exceeds those limits, such that the ATF has essentially rewritten the law. This it cannot do, especially where criminal liability can, and according to the government's own assertions, will broadly be broadly imposed without any congressional input whatsoever. An agency cannot label conduct lawful one day and felonious the next. Yet that is exactly what the ATF accomplishes with this final rule. End quote.
I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sneak in first on this one. This is great news. And from what I've been reading online, it sounds like this is effective throughout the nation, not just in the Fifth Circuit, which, by the way, is Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi is the Fifth Circuit. The way I've been reading online, I'm not a lawyer. Do not take my advice on this. Do not lean on me for your information. Check it out for yourself. But I believe it's effective all throughout the nation. What we need now is like the Ninth Circuit, which is heavily anti-gun, or at least historically has been, to rule the other way, so that we have a circuit split and we can kick this up to the Supreme Court. Rob, you're in show notes. Yeah,
I do think that the Third and Seventh Circuits have ruled for the ATF. So Christmas came early for you, Paul.
Oh, very cool. And let me. We're
Check the comments.
Yeah, let me. I've already got one. Let me get one up here. The ATF doesn't know how to define an assault weapon. At least the director, Dettelbach, does not know how to define an assault weapon.
I have this great picture of Petrolino and I at the presentation that Dettelbach did at SHOT Show last year with both of us sleeping.
Yes.
I put something like, we're enjoying listening to the ATF.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's just Dettelbach. He's from what's most telling me about this about Steve Dettelbach is when he was being kicked around as the future possible head of ATF. He's from Ohio, and we all know somebody from Ohio that is really involved politically. And she didn't know him. She didn't know of him. She didn't know who he was when his name first came around. That means they're hiring nobodies that will just rubber stamp whoever's giving Biden his instructions. They're just rubber stamping them.
Absolutely.
You want to go to New York or you want to go to North Carolina?
I want to go to a comment, and I do not know the answer to this comment. AR pistol legal for all now or still pending? What I believe that ruling was out of the Fifth Circuit was
as well.
Yeah, was home built. So you're talking the Polymer
Pistol
80.
brace.
Yeah. The Polymer 80 handguns, the 3D printed receivers for ARs.
That was last Thursday, and that ruling was by, out of which circuit? Brito versus ATF, Matthew Kaskamark, District Court, also the fifth, 3-judge panel.
Okay.
So different case, similar outcome.
All right. So, but and again, I want to stress none of this is gone before SCOTUS. This is all in district courts. So,
all right. So I'm sitting here thinking about this. I watched one of Guns and Gadgets videos on the pistol brace. Is there a difference between an AR pistol and an AR with a pistol brace? So
yes.
when that question.
Yes.
Okay, so when that question came up, he asked about AR pistols, and I'm like, ooh, does he mean pistols or does he mean pistol braces? Because I think they're two different things. And I believe the pistol brace is supposed to no longer be an issue.
Right.
Like they're supposed to be legal now.
Yeah,
right.
Thursday.
All right,
right.
Rob. I don't know. Let me look. I think I could use a teeth straightening. What do you think, man?
I would suggest you go to North Carolina, where an orthodontist is giving away complimentary handguns for patients who come in to have their teeth straightened. He calls the program Grins and Glocks. Now, should you already have a handgun? You can choose from a free membership in a local gun club. Legislation follows culture. I like this. We need 1 million more like it. If we had enough of those in upper New York State, maybe the laws would change. Oh, speaking of New York, can I go there?
Yeah, let's do that. Oh, Charlie, go.
Charlie.
Do you guys heard that there was a contractor in Florida that was giving away turkeys and ARs if you bought a new floor or something?
Do I want a turkey or do I want, the AR seems to be a little bit more high dollar than a turkey.
Right. Well, I think it was both. I think he was giving away a turkey and an AR if you purchased the, I don't know if it was flooring or roofing. It might have been roofer. But yeah, I think that was down in Florida.
And then,
so there's
And you know, whenever
I guess-
Charlie and I get together, there's got to be pop culture references. I'm thinking back to my childhood to an episode of WKRP in Cincinnati. I hope they distributed them differently.
Right. I would assume so. I think they found out that
swear to God, I
didn't
thought
quite work.
turkeys could fly.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. Bingo. You know it's got to be mainstream. It's got to be mainstream pop culture if Rob Morse gets it, because I don't think Rob Morse has watched TV since 1984.
About right, yes. All right, to New York, closer to reality, not all the way there. Their instant background check, the height of New York gun control. It's going to save lives, except ordinary citizens. It takes us 4 hours to get a package of shotgun shells. Now, to us, that's a fault. To New York Democrats, on contrary, that's a feature. What's amazing is that a local news outlet went to a sporting goods store just to buy some shot shells. They're bird hunters. And then they wrote about the results. This is from a small town paper, county paper. It's west of the Finger Lakes. The transcript, okay, so here they go. The transaction begins around 11:40. They hand over all the identifying information. It's electronically edited, submitted to the state police. And 25 minutes later, the editor or publisher, I guess, is told, I'm sorry, the transaction is delayed. It could be anywhere from 10 minutes to a few days. So he leaves his phone number, goes back to work. About 3:40, they call him up almost 4 hours later. And they say, yeah, you can come back and get your shotgun shells now. People use a firearm for violent purposes. They get them illegally. They bypass regulations. Can't they do the same thing with ammunition? Now, this is a editor of a New York small paper saying this, not Rob Morse. He goes on, if so, forcing law-abiding gun owners to jump through these same hoops for bullets that they use for firearms, that's not going to substantially improve public safety. It's going to push law-abiding citizens further away. It causes resentment and further mistrust of government from his lips to the voters' ears.
Yeah, if you know, I cannot imagine that this is going to stop even one violent crime in New York. Last I checked, New York has borders with other states. I mean, you can still drive from New York into Pennsylvania. You can still drive from New York into New Jersey, into Vermont. Mass doesn't. I don't have Google Maps up in front of me. I'm really remembering from my cracked memory. Massachusetts has borders with New York.
Right, but they're not going to sell you any ammunition in Massachusetts unless you have a Massachusetts LTC.
Okay,
So,
well,
and I think in Connecticut, which there's also a section of New York that borders Connecticut, I think you have to have an ammunition purchase permit, to buy ammo in Connecticut.
regardless.
But I mean, regardless, yes, completely. Regardless, people are going to. We learn, when you sit down and look at the high-profile things that have been happening in the gun community. I'm using that term loosely. In the gun news, the murderer up in Lewiston, Maine, from the end of October, waited 2 months before he wanted to try to purchase a suppressor. So he's got a timeline. In the manifesto from the Nashville murderer, she said there was something that happened in 2021, but she still was able to persevere and get through. She planned what she was doing. She took the time to prepare for it and get all the things that are needed and necessary. So background checks are useless in this sort of situation. In any of these situations, they're not going to stop a murderer from doing anything that wants to do something quickly. It's just going to make them plan more.
Yeah, it absolutely, and it's going to prohibit things such as, we all know Dr. John Adine from Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. Dr. Adine's a friend of mine. He's been a frequent guest on the show, but first and foremost, I consider him a friend. Dr. Dean loves to go pheasant hunting, and South Dakota is one of the South Dakota's claims to fame, besides freedom, is it's the pheasant capital of the world. If you want to go pheasant hunting, there's nowhere better than the Central Plains of South Dakota. And when Dr. Dean goes pheasant hunting, he flies into my home state of South Dakota, into my home city of Sioux Falls. And 2 years ago, he had me go buy 2 cases of shotgun shells for him. He thought he was going to use a bunch of shells hunting. Well, I did. When he shows up, I give him the ammo, and he shot, I think, 3 boxes out of 2 cases. So I take the ammo back, and I store it for him. This year he comes back. I give him the ammo back. He shoots a few more boxes of it. This just ensures that I get him coming back every year for the next, I don't know, generation, to be sure that I get to see my friend in person at least once a year, go out, have dinner, have a drink or two. I couldn't do that if South Dakota had background check requirements for ammo. And nobody is being hurt with the exception of a few pheasants that need to be hurt. That it would just and I'm getting messages that Facebook is dropping our stream. I still see us up and good in Restream. All right. Well, let's just keep going, guys. I'm wasting time here.
Let's go to Iran.
Let's do Israel.
Sorry. Israel recently asked to buy 24,000 rifles from the United States. Is anybody surprised why after the 7th? President Joe Biden blocked the sale, claiming that some of those rifles might reach Israeli civilians. Joe Biden has blood on his hands. This is the same administration that the State Department said today they want to send another $10 billion with a B dollars to Iran.
This is the same administration that left how many tons of real weapons of war and to the Taliban or whoever wanted to grab it in Afghanistan.
Right. I think from what I heard, didn't they make these items that they left behind in Afghanistan make their way to Hamas?
I wouldn't doubt it in the least.
Yeah, this is one of the things that I heard. Back in back in October.
$7 billion of equipment were left in Afghanistan.
Wow.
It's unbelievable how much money that I'm just going to say the government thinks that we have. It's astonishing that we're throwing this money around willy-nilly. Not that we shouldn't support Israel, but
we absolutely
ridiculous.
Should.
I'm with you on that, but this isn't going to Israel. This is going to Iran, and yeah, it's a lot of frickin' money.
It is. When you read about what Hamas has been confirmed doing to Israeli citizens, it is absolutely infuriating. I've said before, there's a real good reason I'm not a diplomat, because Gaza would be a smoking hole, and Iran would be a large sheet of glass, which is what happens when you melt sand. There would be nothing left, and there would be no human habitation available for generations. I would have killed them all, let God sort them out, so to speak. I'm not in charge of negotiations, or I'm not a diplomat of any type. But we need to be We need to be giving Israel all the support we can possibly give them. And here we go saying, yeah, well, maybe not. And this is ridiculous for
I think the hardest pill that I have swallowing with this is Joe Biden is so anti-gun. He doesn't want to give people that need firearms to be able to protect themselves. Like, how anti-gun is he? Let's see. Israel's under attack, and he doesn't want to give the people of Israel the opportunity or the ability to be able to defend their country.
And a lot of liberal Jews in this country go, yeah, that makes sense. That's the one I don't.
Right. This is their people. Like, holy moly, man. Yeah. I'm sure you guys have seen, I don't know if you guys follow, I think it's Mr. Guns and Gear, I think is who it is, on Instagram. He's posting a ton of pro-Palestine videos that are taken right here in the United States. There were some in Boston, there were some in New York, there were some in, shockingly, in California. On Veterans Day, there was a video at a pro-Palestinian protest in New York City. There was a guy that climbed a light pole to take down American flags and UN flags. Now, you can take half of them down. I'm cool with that. But it's completely insane.
All right, guys,
Shall we go on to DGUs?
Yes, let's do that. We are getting there. So we're going to step aside to our final break. When we come back, we'll get into our defensive gun use segment, and we'll also close the show down. My goal is to get all shows in now in under an hour. We're at 46 minutes, so we got to hustle. We'll be right back right after we hear from JPFO.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is the defensive gun use segment of the Polite Society podcast. These discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The defensive gun use segment is intended as information and entertainment only, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations, although they should be. Rob, you've got the first one out of Atlanta. This is the one we teased in the open.
Yeah, a building contractor needs more than a nail gun during a remodel. He's walking out to his truck. It's just after noon, and he sees a stranger reaching inside the truck. Contractor yells, says, "Hey, stop that, get out of there." And it's a good thing it did. It probably saved his life. The thief turns and shoots at the contractor. The contractor was armed. He shot back and then retreated into the home where he's remodeling. From there, he calls 911 and asks for help. Police arrived at the scene and disarmed the attacker. Attacker didn't go anywhere. He had a fairly gaping hole in his leg. EMTs treat the attacker and transport him to the hospital. Police arrested him and later identify him. It turns out he's a juvenile under 18. The contractor gave a statement to the police, points out the evidence behind him, bullet holes in the wall, shell casings near where the attacker was. It's been a week, and I can't find any news stories that describe this teenager being charged with a crime. I'm thinking like attempted murder. Nada.
That's it. Yeah. While you were reading this, the first thought in my mind is it's never a good idea to use deadly force to defend property. However, you can certainly use your voice. Hey, stop that. And then it sounds like from the way you describe it, Rob, is he said, "Hey, stop that." Guy turns around and starts throwing shots. At that point, yes, use your deadly force to defend your own life. Absolutely.
Exactly. No, it's right. You got it, Charlie.
Yeah,
March on.
it went. It went from being a not a deadly situation to a deadly situation pretty quickly. So rock on with self defense. Our next story.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, our next DGU took place in Wake Forest Crossing, North Carolina. The armed citizen was walking across the grocery store parking lot on a Saturday night. He heard some people arguing. He looked at the man. It looked like a man was arguing with a couple. The bystander slowed down to see what was going on. The argumentative man shouted louder, and the bystander saw him present a firearm and shoot at the couple. They backed away, and the armed attacker chased them. The bystander had his North Carolina concealed carry permit, and he was armed that night and carrying concealed. He pulled his firearm and shot the attacker. The attacker stopped shooting and ran away. The defender saw him get into a car and drive away. At that point, the defender holstered his firearm and called 911. He asked the couple if they were wounded. The defender said stayed at the scene and identified himself to the police when they arrived. The attacker crashed the car a few blocks away. The police arrested the attacker and took him to jail. The attacker was banged up from the car crash, but neither the couple nor the attacker was wounded. The attacker was charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill, discharging a firearm within city limits, driving while impaired, driving without a driver's license, failure to wear a seatbelt, and failure to maintain lane control. Police later called the attack domestic violence. The news doesn't mention what happened to the defender's groceries. He was not charged with a crime.
I was worried about the groceries, given the price of luncheon meat in the grocery store.
Cost of groceries, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, let's get serious. I want you to notice this is a psychological stop of an intoxicated man. He had a plan. Hey, you're with my ex-girlfriend, blah, 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 whatever. I don't know what it was. But somehow when he shot at them, it was okay. When someone shot at him, that changed everything. One of the things I was thinking is a parking lot is full of concealment, not a lot of cover. And that means if you're shooting at somebody, where the heck is that bullet going to stop?
Yes. Absolutely. There is some cover if you know how cars are built and you know which. Anymore, is the car front engine, rear engine? Is it electric?
Right.
Where, if
you imagine putting it, that's a John Wick story. I shot a Tesla and it would burn for 5 days.
Yes. Well, I mean, realistically, if you are looking for the engine block to stop a bullet, and they do, and you crouch in front of the front tire, beside the front tires of a car, hoping the engine block will stop any bullets that go through the car. What if it's a Tesla and the battery is all along the bottom floor pan, and all that's up there is a front trunk? The other thing I'm wondering, alcohol, almost certainly, but I'm wondering if there might have been more than just alcohol involved here. I want to go back to Rob Morse's. Yeah, I want to go back to Rob Morse's. I want to hear I want to see the toxicology report on this one, because there could have been more than just alcohol. There could have been any number of a plethora of other mind-altering substances involved here. The other distinction I want to draw, and we say this all the time, we are not the police. Generally, you don't want to get involved. Picturing this in my head, one guy yelling at 2 people, drawing a gun. Is it the police? Well, listen to the voice, listen to the cadence. If the person's intoxicated, even if that person is a police officer and they're intoxicated, I might be inclined to get involved. I don't know. Rob, you're typing furiously.
Yeah, Paul, think about this. You're in a grocery store parking lot. If you shout stop, you're going to generate probably a lot of eyewitnesses. Once the gunfire has started, the bad guy shooting, you probably don't want to talk. There's a lethal threat to other people. You don't want to be throwing words when other people are throwing shots.
Amen to that.
Well, I think Tuco said it in Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. When it's time to talk, talk. When it's time to shoot, shoot.
Oh, another firearms expert has weighed in.
All right. Let's go ahead. We're going to step aside to our... No, we're not. We're just going to go ahead and start our final segment. And
Paul, we got a minute. Why don't we go to the end here? Because,
we've got a recording. We got 5 minutes before we hit the 1 hour mark. 4 minutes and change. So, Rob, what's up at Slow Facts real quick?
Yeah, I want you to read deeper and look at politics past the press releases. The Democrat Party calls itself the Party of Justice, unless you're a Jew living in New York City. There you're told to stay inside your home so that you don't provoke violence simply by walking down the street. If you apply now, your application to possess a firearm in New York City can be denied in a couple of years when the bureaucrats finally process it. Good luck getting a permit to carry and defend your family. Laws are for the little people. If you really wanted to be safe, have a firearm, then you'd buy your own security team like the elite billionaires and politicians. The Democrat Party says they're the party that respects women's rights, unless your attacker claims to be an intersectional victim in Los Angeles. Too bad that you're a white woman and you're sexually assaulted by a homeless Hispanic drug addict in LA County. You see that the political perceptions are more important than your physical safety. Thank you again. You can apply for your carry permit. I understand that the chief of police in Los Angeles grants a few $100 a year for enough money. You might be one of the lucky elites who gets one. That article is called Progressives Promise Sympathy and Deliver Injustice. Find it at the Slow Facts blog. Charlie, talk to us.
All right. Tomorrow, episode 184 of Riding Shotgun with Charlie comes out. Alicia Garcia, the Boomstick Babe, is the passenger in the show. She actually has a court case against the state of Colorado for the 3-day waiting period. And before the show tonight, she did an Instagram live video talking about that. So I've got to go back and see what's going on with that. But that's going to be dropped tomorrow on YouTube and in podcast form. And next week, the Thanksgiving issue of Armed Lifestyle magazine is going to be dropping. And in Writing Shotgun with Charlie, I am going to have Sarah Joy Albrecht in the article. So that's what's up with me. Paul, take it away. You're muted, sir.
Oh, we unmute me. All right. For me, I'm going to ask everybody to join me Wednesday night for Polite Society News, and then Sunday night this week for the weekend edition of the news. We are so close to the top of our recording time. We're going to go ahead and set it aside here. So scrolling down, do join our Facebook listeners group. If you're a member of Facebook, just search for Polite Society Podcast Listeners. That does wrap up another episode of Polite Society Podcast. I'd like to thank Tom Knighton for joining us today. So for Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Carrie Ann, and Rob,
until next time,
stay safe,
be aware,
and we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.